Hello and welcome to the Business Central Training Place, the channel for all things BC, where you get to not only learn how one of the best ERP solutions on the market works in detail, but you also get to find out maybe why you might want to use it in a specific manner. So I'll do my best to explain not only the ins and outs of how to set up and work with the system, but also give you the real world examples of where you might apply these functionalities. So before we jump in today's video, where we'll be covering the functionality of creating and reporting timesheets, let me remind you to hit the subscribe button and also don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss the next video upload on the channel, as there will be loads of those. Without further ado, let's jump into the system. You will notice that I have already assigned my user the role center for project manager, as this gives me some nice shortcuts which make the whole navigation easier. So the first thing we need to do before we start using the timesheets functionality is set up several things. The first thing is we need to set up the users who will be working with this functionality. So we need to go to the user setup, and I've already done it. I have my user ID. This is the one I'm logging in with. And I went ahead and assigned him as a timesheet administrator. And you will want to have at least one timesheet administrator out of all the users, because this permission gives you some extra privileges to essentially substitute another user who would normally perform a task and is not available, i.e. maybe they're on vacation. Another setup we need to do is we need to actually go ahead and check the resources setup, and that's because the resources are what we're going to use to report the timesheet. So timesheets are created for resource cards, and on the resources setup page you can find the resource default numbers, the timesheet numbers, which are going to be used for each new timesheet that's created, and you can also choose which is the first working day of the week, which defines what's the order of the timesheet reporting lines. And then you have a nice interesting function which lets you choose who gets to approve each timesheet. So by default it's set to never, and the function is called, the option is called timesheet by job approval. If it's set to never, basically it means that each resource has a team leader, so to speak, who is responsible for approving their time. The last option, if you set it to always, essentially means that whenever the timesheet is reported for a project, so let's say I'm a resource, I worked on 2 different projects within the same week, the project managers who are assigned to these projects have the responsibility to approve my time. And that's basically what that means. And the middle option means that in case the resource was a machine, you see what I mean in a second, then for machines specifically, it has to be the project manager approving the time, but for employees, which are people, then okay, they can have the team leaders. So basically that's a nice set of combinations. I will set it to never since I'm the only user in the database, and well, it's just easier for the demo right now. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and create a new resource. I've gone ahead and added the resources shortcut here. It's not there by default in the role center, but well, I like to make my life easy. By the way, if you're wondering how I did that, don't forget to go and check the video for navigation and just general personalizations you can do in the system. So we are in the list of resources, and I went ahead and created a resource so we can save some time, but I'll still show you the major things you need to set up. So if you click new, you will of course be asked to set up a number, and this can be assigned automatically by the number series, as we just saw can be assigned in the resources setup. Then we have the name of the resource, and then we have the type, and these are the 2 types you have: a person or a machine. And there isn't a very big difference between the 2 options, except what we just saw in the resources setup, where the approvals for timesheet can depend on this setting. Otherwise, it basically doesn't matter too much how you set it up. Then you have a base unit of measure, which I've gone ahead and set up as hour, and generally that's enough. You don't have to do anything else. In the video for the jobs management module, we will talk more at length on how you can set up other unit of measures and relations to them. And the next thing you need to set up is the use timesheet toggle. You need to activate it. If it's deactivated, which is the default when you create a new resource, then you will not be able to create a timesheet and you will not be able to use that functionality. So this is crucial for our goals today. And then we need to set up the timesheet owner user ID. This is basically the link between this resource card and which user that logs into the system is actually doing the reporting of the time. And this is why I went to the user setup, because when you log in as a new user which is created, that's something that has to be created. The user setup does not get updated automatically. The next thing we need to set up is the timesheet approver. So as I mentioned, most of the time this will be the team leader responsible for this person. But as we saw, it's possible to overwrite whatever this setting is and the approvals to be done by the respective project managers working on the jobs where this person performed some tasks. The next things we will need to set up are the general product posting group and the VAT product posting group. I won't go into details here. These are more part of the finance setups and the jobs management, but essentially that's your link to the finance module in the system, as these groups define which geo accounts are used during posting and whenever you're invoicing the resource, what VAT to be used. Now, of course, there are plenty of other fields which could be interesting to set up, like the resource groups, and there's some more data and costing, and we can set up prices and discounts and costs. We will cover that in the jobs module training, so that will be a separate video I'll do shortly. So at this point we are ready with the resource itself, and we could start reporting time. Now, if there is one more setup we may have to do if we actually want to report not only time spent working on projects, but also absences. So things like sick leave or paid leave or whatever it is. If we want to do that and report these types of times in the timesheet, then we actually have to go to the employees, which are part of the HR module, and then create an employee card, which again I have already done. And again, I won't go into detail here. That might be a video way down the line, since this module is not nearly that much used as all the others. But in short, we need to create a employee card, and here in the administration tab you have the resource number, which is basically your link between the two modules. So this will be necessary if you want to report this type of time. So how do we actually report timesheets? This is all the setup you need. Plus, of course, you need some jobs, some projects on which you will be working. But again, this will be part of a different training. Well, we need to search for the timesheets. And I usually like to go in the timesheets list and create the timesheets from there. But of course, you can first create timesheets and then go to the list. Doesn't really matter. When I'm here, the list is currently empty as there are no open timesheets. So I can go ahead and click create timesheets, which is the same option we saw in the menu. Basically, it's asking me to choose the starting date. And I can choose anyone. So let's actually go to today, since the calendar is going a bit into the future. And let me create a timesheet starting from this week, so starting from Monday. By the way, if you try to choose the 17th, you will get an error message, since the starting date has to be a Monday, and that was the setting we did a minute earlier. The option to choose the number of periods basically defines how many timesheets are going to be created. One period is always 1 week, and usually it makes sense to create the timesheet for this week, unless you're lazy and you want to create them for the whole month or year. I wouldn't recommend doing that, because I mean, the only thing you're creating is the chance option that somebody reports their time in the wrong timesheet, which helps no one. There is a way to schedule this creation process. So you can actually schedule this using the job queues and say that periodically, let's say every Sunday or Saturday, whatever the case, or Monday really early morning, this job runs and creates a timesheet for next week. So that's easily done. You can set some filters and decide which resources do you want timesheets created for. Since my one is the only one set up to actually use timesheets, even if I don't choose anything here, when I click OK, it's only going to create the one timesheet for me, which is the case. And now that it's created, basically I just have a number, starting and ending date, and a resource number. And I have an empty checkbox which could show me if there was some comments written here, which of course it's a new one, there isn't. The checkbox will be ticked if there was any comment populated. So let's go ahead and open the timesheet. What you see in front of you is the lines, where as you can see you have a different column for each day of the week. And then you have some columns which allow you to choose what did you actually work on. Now the columns for job number and job task number will not be there by default, so you will have to go and click personalize and then click the plus field button and then drag them in from here. So I'll go ahead and add the work type code so you can see how it's done, and we can add the cause of absence. So you'll see in a second, these are basically all fields which are visible and you don't need them in order to see that data, but this is just an easy way to look at them without clicking additionally. So how do you actually report time? Well, it's as easy as selecting first what type of activity did you perform. And as you can see, basically you have one activity, and if you worked on the same activity in multiple consecutive days within the same week, then you just report the time on the same line, which I find pretty easy, but sometimes can be confusing for people. So what are the options here? If I choose type resource, then that basically means I just worked on internal, non-project related, non-customer related activities. So if I do that, then when I click in the description field, I can click on the assist edit button, which is the one with the 3 dots. And this will basically allow me to just enter a description, which I could have done here, and choose a work type code, which is empty right now. I'll explain in a second what it means. And then I can report the time I spent. So we'll skip that part. Again, this is more for internal work done for the organization. Although I would generally recommend to set up like a dummy job to do that, because you still probably want to record the expenses in a different manner. But again, it's a matter of options, and this can be discussed in a different, more detailed video. The option I expect people to use most of the time, maybe more than 90%, is the job, which essentially means that I worked on projects. And what this means is that when I click in the description field, I can click the 3 dots, and this gives me a wizard, and you will notice that these are the same columns that I have here shown as columns. And as I mentioned, by default they're hidden, the idea being that this is enough. And you can just choose the project you worked on. Let's say new office furniture. I worked on the task initial consultation. You can override the description if you need to give some more details. And the word type code is where you can define a setting, which has to be predefined. You actually need to create a word type code, and I'll explain in detail how you create them and how you actually use them. But the short version is you can link the various costs and the prices at which you sell this resource to customers depending on the word type code. So we'll dig more into detail when we're talking in the jobs module, which will be a separate training video. And that's where we explain the chargeable option. So for now, we just leave this empty and click OK. And as you can see, these columns are populated. So I just show them so it's easier to see. Then it's as easier just saying, okay, Monday, maybe I didn't do anything on this project. And I had 4 hours on Tuesday and 3 hours consulting on Wednesday. And then I'll just go ahead and enter a second line, and you can choose another project and job task. You already get the idea. The service option will let you choose which service order did you work on. So that's linked to the service management module. We're not going to use that right now, but again, resources can be used there to report the time you spent, let's say, fixing a PC or a car or electronics or whatever it was you were doing there. So we may cover this for a future video for service module management. It's a similar situation with the assembly orders. They actually require some extra setup, and honestly, I'm not sure why they put them in the timesheet, since there is a dedicated assembly order where the resource can report. So yeah, I honestly don't expect anyone to use this specific option here. We will, however, cover the absences. This is the sole reason why I went ahead and created the employee card. And that's so we can click here and say, okay, what is the cause of the absence? And then you get to choose from this predefined list of codes. And I'm just giving you one example. Could be paid leave, sick leave, training, whatever you accept within your organization. Of course, only specific users should be able to create these. So go ahead and choose this one. I can, again, overwrite the description. And then basically you report the time. So maybe Monday I took a whole day off, and maybe that was the case for Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So that's basically how you report your time. You enter lines. You can have as many lines as you want. There is no actual limit. By the way, you can add additional information. So if you select a specific line and click the line button here above the lines, plenty of lines here, then you get something called line comments. And if you click that, you get this nice screen where you get as many lines as you like, with 100 characters of text on each of them. And this can be visible to the user who's maybe supposed to report this. Now you may wonder, so how do I know that there is a comment on this line and there isn't on the first line? So if you choose the first line, at the very bottom on the fact box on the right hand side here, you have something called line comment no. But if we go to the second line, you see how this turns to a yes. So that's basically how you know whether a line comment was added. And you have a similar thing here for the whole timesheet. So the next option was timesheet comments, which is the same function, but that works for the whole document. So these are some easy ways how to figure out. And by the way, if there is a timesheet comment, remember the checkbox in the list as well. Other than that, we're done. I mean, there is a quick total calculation, so you can see the time per day, you can see the total time with its status, whether it's open or submitted for approval or rejected, pending, and so on. We'll cover these next. You can potentially compare actual versus budgeted time, but that requires the jobs module again. So that's going to be a highly anticipated video, I suspect, with all these references. So the next logical step for the employee is to submit these times for approval. You do that by clicking process and then submit. And you can choose whether you want to submit all of the lines or just a specific selected one. I'll go ahead and just do that. And you can see the status is changed, and then the total amount of hours goes to submitted now. So what happens next? Well, if we go back to our role center, you will notice that that's actually the reason why I have the project manager, and that's if I hit refresh, you see that it was already there. You have submitted timesheets 1. If you hit that, it will bring you the list of the submitted timesheets, and you can see, I mean, basically, this is the view that I see as an employee. If you, however, go and check, oh wow, I'm missing an option here. There is usually another option showing timesheets to approve, and I guess I am not. Let me see if I can go somewhere else. Okay, that's what I was looking for, so I guess the refresh didn't work. So this is what you'll see if you are the person assigned as the approver for the timesheet. So if you click here, you will see a slightly different view of the list of timesheets, since you might have tens or dozens of different timesheets to approve. But basically you just have some extra checkboxes which show you if there's any rejected or approved or pending submitted for approval times. Then you just click edit the timesheet, and you can look at these times and decide whether you approve them or not. So let's say we're okay with the time leave because, I mean, we probably pre-approved it anyway. So I'll approve the selected line only. And for this line, we have some other options. So we can either reject or reopen it. My personal recommendation is if you're not happy with these times and you want them revised, then click the reject option, because then the timesheet goes into a separate list of rejected and the user knows what's going on. You can reopen as well, but then there is no meaningful way to distinguish whether this line is reopened because the person just forgot to send it for approval or because you want something happening there. You can, of course, if you want to add a, here it's under show, you can add a line comment and you explain what you mean, but I mean, you do have this nice option, so why not use it? So I'll hit reject and then just say selected lines only. And what this means is that for the user that reported the time, now he sees this timesheet in the rejected timesheets list. So what they can do, that's pretty much the only thing they can do, is come over here and they can only edit the times and then submit them again for approval. There's nothing else they can do. If you click process reopen, nothing happens because, I mean, the second line is approved and the first one is rejected. So all they can do is say, okay, granted, maybe I did spend 1 hour playing solitaire here, so how about this now? And then we submit again. And because the other lines are approved, I can click all because it's gonna only change the unapproved line, so that's okay. And then we're going to go back and put our head as the approver and basically repeat the process, but this time approve everything. So you might think that is the end of the process, right? All of the timesheet lines are approved, done. That is not really the case. It kind of depends what time was reported. Normally, the next step would be to click Move Timesheets to Archive, but you will notice an error I'm going to get if I click that. And that's posted must be yes. The reason for that is because we reported time on a job, and this time is still in the timesheet, it's approved, but it has not reflected as expense on the job itself. In order to do that, we have to go and do something very easy and very quick. We go to the job journals over here, or of course you can search for them from the tell me how option. Open the whichever batch you're using, click prepare, and use the suggest lines from timesheet option. And here you can choose your starting and ending date for the period for which you want to have suggested lines. Now I've given a very big period of time because I didn't want to bother and choose the specific week. But of course you would normally choose last week or whatever is the case. You can choose a resource filter or job filter depending on the case. I'll just click OK and it's going to find all of the reported times which have been approved but have not yet been posted. And basically what you see here is two lines. I'll go ahead and delete the first one, the empty one. And the two lines are basically ready. I mean, you can review them if you want to change something, but why would you? The timesheets were approved. Normally there could be an automatic number assigned here. It's a matter of setup of the batch, so we'll ignore it for now. And then you just click post. It's as easy as that. And once the journal lines are posted, the lines go away and we can go back and check our approved timesheet. So now we can use the function move timesheets to archive. You can of course apply a filter if you don't want to move all of them. And when I click OK, it's going to disappear. As you can see, you can actually schedule this function, so this is not something you have to do manually. You can set it, I mean, if you have a strict agenda and you know that, let's say, every Monday by noon, timesheets are being approved, then maybe you can run it in the afternoon or in the evening or whatever the case. So that's a simple task of just using the job queue entries. In my case, I just click OK. And you can see a message saying 1 timesheets have been moved to the archive. And now this is gone. If we open the main timesheets list, you will see, of course, that there is nothing there. And the next step will be to create the next timesheet for the next week. So what happened with our timesheet? Well, it went to the timesheets archive, of course. And you can go over there and see all the various times which are reported for the, in this case, consecutive, I think, well, not exactly weeks. And the only thing you can do with this is just look at it and maybe create some kind of a report. There aren't any out of the box because the idea is that you are using either the jobs module or the service module to actually see the report. But that it is, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you create and manage timesheets. It's pretty easy. They're, say, fun. Yeah, unless you have to do it every day, then maybe it's not as much fun. So again, if you like this video, hit the likes button. If there's something you didn't like or disagree, feel free to leave me a comment. I promise to check it. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because there will be more videos coming, and I'm sure you can hardly wait to get to the next video, which is for the jobs management. So see you next time here in the BC Learning Place. I'm Sami.